Uh, on behalf of the ICC GC Board of Directors and the ICC GC Lecture Committee, I'd like to welcome you all to this fifth lecture for this year, 2025-2026. And I'm here to welcome our brother and my good friend, Dr. Muhammad Kaiseruddin, to give us this lecture today. Dr. Muhammad Kaiseruddin earned his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the Osmania University in Hyderabad, India. He earned his PhD in Nuclear Engineering, Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. He was a long-time manager of a nuclear power plant design until he retired in the year 2017. That's on the professional academic level, but on the his involvement in the Chicago Muslim community, Dr. Kaiseruddin served the Chicago Muslim community in various leadership capacities for over 40 years. He co-founded the Council of Islamic Organization of Greater Chicago and served as its chairman. He also served as the president of the Muslim Community Center in Chicago and the chairman of the Zakat Chicago. He's still involved with the Zakat Chicago right now after Rashad Khan has taken over. Dr. Kaiseruddin is currently the chairman of the Downtown Islamic Center. He is self-taught on the Quran and the Islamic studies and has been and continues to be invited to deliver Friday khutbahs at various mosques and Islamic centers. I've heard many of his khutbahs actually at the Islamic Foundation in Villa Park, Dr. Kaiseruddin. His title for the lecture today is mentioned here, Taqwa and the Characteristics of Al-Muttaqoon. So with that, I would welcome Dr. Muhammad Kaiseruddin to start. Thank you so much.
السلام عليكم
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. Alhamdulillah, the weather is much better today than 2 weeks ago, and I'm glad that I have this opportunity to talk to you about Taqwa and Muttaqoon before the start of Ramadan. That's what I wanted to make sure. We initially talked about another topic, which is Ulul Albab, but when I saw that Ramadan was coming, I said a better topic, timely topic would be to talk about Taqwa and Muttaqoon, and I'll explain inshallah. I'm sure you know the connection between Ramadan and Taqwa. So what I want to start out by saying that Quran defines different levels of Muslims. That when you say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, you enter into Islam. And in an official Islamic government, you are a full-fledged Muslim with all the rights. But in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a little different. And so there's a verse in Surah Al-Hujurat, and that brings out the distinction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very clearly says, قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the Bedouin Arabs, these were some Arabs, tribes, and the outskirts of Medina, they accepted Islam and immediately demanded their rights and so on. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them very openly, very clearly, that those Bedouin Arabs say that they are mu'mineen. Tell them you have Muslims now. Iman has not entered into your heart yet. And if once your Iman enters your heart, then you become a mu'min. So there's a big difference between a Muslim and a mu'min. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that distinction, then there are other distinctions also. So there is sort of different categories of Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses in the Quran. And I came across some of these things and it intrigued me. I should find out as to what are the expectations, what are the definitions of, say for example, we already know that Muslim and Mu'min are two. Then there's a Sabir, person who, see, Sabir definition, we normally take it to mean people who are patient, people who act with patience, do not get excited about any calamity comes to them. But the Quranic definition of Sabir is something different. Quranic definition of Sabir says that any calamity comes to them, they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed, we belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we return to Him. So why worry about any calamity? Why panic any difficulty comes to you when we know that everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So that's the definition of Sabir. And there is a definition of Muttaqi. There is a definition of Ulul Albab. So I said I should look into these things. You know, once we know we are a Muslim, and if there are other ranks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran al-Majid, we should know and see what can we achieve. We know, for example, that each person is different, has a different personality. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala, companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those two personalities were so different from each other, right? We know, we learned the history of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala and Umar radiallahu ta'ala. They were strong supporters of Islam, but their attitudes and their was completely different. So based upon the capabilities that individual has, they can try to achieve different types of ranks in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran al-Majid. So it is very important for us to learn from the Quran what are these different categories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, and what are the definitions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not just gives the name, He describes the definitions, what are the expectations from these people. And then what are the rewards for those people. And you know, Quran is a very special book. If it was any other book like we are familiar with, the people write the books, then they have chapters and they have sections in which they all say that there could be one chapter about types of Muslims. And then they will take up a Muslim and a Mu'min and a Sabir and all those things and describe everything together in one chapter. Quran is not like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His own wisdom as to how He arranged the Quran. But Muslims Muslims and non-Muslims have developed some technology to word search in the Quran. There are websites that you can go to and put the word Taqwa in there and search how many places in the Quran Majid Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Taqwa and Muttaqi, and you can bring them together and compile your own chapter of what Taqwa is, what Muttaqi is, what are the expectations, and what are the rewards for all those things. Similarly for those things. Some of you may be familiar, there are books written like this, but I've not found any, so I did my own word searching. That's my research into the Quran, and collected verses that talk about Taqwa, that talk about Muttaqi, and then characterize them. Okay, what is the definition? What are the expectations from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about these things? And in case of Taqwa, you will see not only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes what Taqwa and Muttaqi is, but He also says how to achieve it. There is a process that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives for achieving taqwa. So in agenda-wise, I'm going to, I just talked about the rank of Muslims and all that. Now, definition of taqwa, what is taqwa? It's one of the very difficult words. The root word of taqwa is waqaya, waw, qaf, and ya. And two of the three letters are we call huruf illa, that they change shape depending upon where they are placed in the words and so on. So waqaya is become very difficult to make it into a noun form or a word form and so on. That's why it becomes difficult to search on taqwa, because it could be ittaqullah. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But muttaqi is something different. So this word, the definition of taqwa, by the way, is translated as several different ways. But I like the best translation of that is, I went over this particular thing already, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا. And what is taqwa? We're talking about that. So the translation of taqwa is, the best translation of this thing is consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you are fully conscious that whatever you do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Whatever you think, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran al-Majid very clearly that you don't have to speak out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in your heart. Once you have that understanding, once you have that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, oh, I better not even think about it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is when you think of doing something wrong, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, but He does not count as a negative thing for you until you actually do something. So, on the other hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's system of justice is that if you think of doing something good, immediately one positive point is added to your record because you thought of doing something. Not you have not done anything, but you have thought of doing something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already counts one thing positive in your record. See, when it's negative, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not until you do something. And positive, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters it the moment you think about doing something. And when we actually go ahead and do it, then there's another reward for you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one place in the Quran al-Majid also said the rewards are for doing something good are 10, whereas the reward, punishment for doing anything wrong is 1. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's justice based upon His mercy. So the best definition of taqwa is consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That knowing that He knows everything and He watches everything, He cares about everything. Whatever you have is provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever difficulty you get into, nobody has a power to impose any difficulty upon you except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why He does it, I'm not going to go into the discussion of that, but there are some reasons. So any difficulty comes upon you, your immediate thought should be not somebody else. It may look like somebody has imposed some difficulty on you. But the thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted that to happen for whatever reason could be. So it should be firm belief that whatever good that we have comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that we have from head to toe comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever we earn, whatever mental powers we have, comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the eyesight, everything, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is innumerable things. You cannot really count what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. But that's what He has. So consciousness of that this is what we have received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the first step. That consciousness. And some people also translate taqwa as reverence, that respect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people also translate it as fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from doing anything wrong. I sort of do not like the translation fear. Of course, some scholars have done it, and I don't want to say that they are wrong, but in another place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the mu'minun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. That mu'min are the people who love the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most, very intense love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I cannot imagine somebody having an intense love with somebody and also fear that person. Of course you are in awe. For example, you respect your father, you love your father, but you also respect. You also hold father in good esteem. If the father tells you something, you try to obey, you try to do something, but that's not fear because you love with it. So taqwa is the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's also translated as a shield. It is something which protects you from, if you have taqwa, then it's something that protects you from doing anything wrong. That's also a definition. So let's go into the discussion a little bit about who is a muttaqi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes. So in Surah Al-Baqarah, very first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alif Lam Mim, Zalikal Kitabu La Rayba Fihi, Hudan Lil Muttaqin. It's a guidance for muttaqin. And then says Allazina, that means it starts to define who muttaqins are. Allazina yu'minuna bil ghayb. These are the people who believe in things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to believe, although we have not seen. Like for example, he himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody else has seen him. Musa alayhi salam talked to him, but nobody, sorry about that. Nobody has, even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has not seen him. So, and the Yawm al-Qiyamah, we do not know. But some things which are unseen for us, but described by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, makes logical sense to us that this universe is there, beautiful universe outside. Somebody must have created it, just does not come into existence by itself. So we have that. Iman, that's Iman bil Ghayb. وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ, and of course establish the prayers. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and from what we have given them, they spend. Everything that we have is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is the definition which is common, applies to mu'min also. And then وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And we believe in what has been revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to the prophets before him, like Musa alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. When it comes to akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a different term for it. It's not just the belief, it's the certainty, yaqeen, that Yawm al-Qiyamah is definitely going to happen. Whatever we have done here on planet Earth in our life, we will be held accountable for that. We will be rewarded for all the good things that we have done, and we will be punished in anything that we have done. So وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So this is one special. I searched the word yuqinun. Does it apply only to muttaqi? No, I found that it applies to mu'minin also. So it's not very specific to muttaqi. And then فَأَتِمُّوا إِلَيْهِمْ عَهْدَهُمْ إِلَى مُدَّتِهِمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And another characteristic of muttaqin is that if they have made a treaty with somebody else, and the other party has, sometimes happens, you make a treaty, and then you become in a stronger position for something. The situation changes, and you become a stronger person, and you don't need the treaty anymore. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if the other party is sticking to their part of the treaty, and have not assisted any enemies of yours, then you must continue with the treaty. And the Muttaqoon, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have that characteristic. When they make a treaty, they stick to it. And they, unless there's any violation that happens. So, so that's the definition. I'm sure I've not covered everything because, as I said, Taqwa and Ittaqu, it's difficult to search in the Quran, and if there are other characters that I'm missing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me for that. Now, what is, not only that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, but there's a strong emphasis given in the Quran. And you may have heard this particular verse. Most of the time, people in Friday khutbah recite this verse. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih. O you who believe, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just conscious. Haqqa tuqatih, as much as He deserves that you should be conscious of Him. If you know, if you realize, if you appreciate the fact that from head to toe what you have, whether inside your brain, heart, everywhere, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You were born from a little baby and you grew, all those things, and it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you got everything from Him, how much conscious you should be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Haqqa tuqatih, as much as He deserves that you should be conscious of Him. If you are conscious of yourself, supposing you have a good friend, and he does things for you and you do things for him, and you have a good relationship between them. How about parents? How about spouses? They all care for each other. They all are conscious of each other. What are the likes and dislikes? If one spouse knows what the other spouse does not like, the spouse has to make sure that they don't do it, otherwise the relationship will not last. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also expects that if you realize what you have gotten from Him, then you should be conscious of Him as to what are His likes and what are His dislikes. What are the commandments that He has given? What are the prohibitions that He has given? You should be all conscious of that thing. Haqqa tuqati. As much as, your spouse each to do, support each other in many different ways. Parents support the children in many different ways. Can anybody compare to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us versus anybody else can give it to us? No, it's just impossible. If we have that realization that everything that we have was given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's how much consciousness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands that we have. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatih wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun, and be not leave the life until you are Muslims. So that's the emphasis part of the taqwa, okay? And then how taqwa is also used as a criterion. So, and this famous verse from Surah Al-Hujurat, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. In one verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described the creation of the entire humankind. He says that, indeed, Ya ayyuhan nasu, or you who be people, whether you believe or not, people, Ya ayyuhan nasu, inna khalaqnakum. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you into min zakarin wa unsa, that male and female, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا, and made them into tribes and nations. Now that the communications are open, we know the difference between people living in America versus people living in Europe and China and Korea and all those different cultures, different languages, different physical dispositions. They're all different, right? Now, says, what is the, how do you know who is better? Is a white person better than a black person? Does an intelligent person better than the person who does not have the intellectual capacity as much as the other? What is it? A tall person is better than a short person? or a short person better is than a long person? What is the criterion that you use in order to distinguish one from the other? Set aside everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Taqwa. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, the most noble among those are the people who have the most taqwa. The judge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges by how much consciousness people have of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to decide who is better than the other one. So, Martin Luther King, when he was fighting here, he says that the color of the skin was the main criterion for him. He said the color of the white color and black color should not make any difference whatsoever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes much beyond that and says that whether it is height or weight or male or female, speaking one language or the other, nothing matters. Whoever has the most consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it could be a person in China, it could be a person in India, it could be a person in Bosnia, no matter what. That person will be the akramakum and most liked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most noble in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's so taqwa has this unique measure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to decide who is a better person than the other one. Expectations from the muttaqi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lays out some expectations also. As we went through the ability to take guidance from the Quran. This is interesting, we should pay attention to this. In Surah Al-Baqarah, first verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Hudal lil muttaqin. Quran is a guidance for muttaqin. But in Surah Al-Baqarah, later on, when he talks about the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Hudal linnas. It's a guidance for the entire mankind. So, but the fact that he has pointed out muttaqin, to me means that muttaqi, a person of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can understand the Quran much better than the person who does not have that much consciousness. So the ability to understand and take guidance from the Quran al-Majid is more among the people who have taqwa than the other people. And ability to take guidance from earlier revelations also, accept admonitions from the stories of earlier prophets, that's also given in as and the expectations, as I said, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the guidance is for the muttaqin. ومن التوراة وآتيناه الإنجيل في هدى ونور ومصدقا لما بين يديه من التوراة. This is, I went over this thing already. Not only that we muttaqis derive guidance from Quran Majid, but also the other revelations. It's part of our belief that Quran is not the only book Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. Although the message is the same, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed other books to other prophets, and we don't have that in their original form right now because it has been lost and it has been corrupted, but we know that some of the things may still be true. Now, where did that verse go? Now, how do you achieve taqwa? And that's very important and timely topic for us. So we know that يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That all you who believe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made fasting, prescribed fasting to people before you, and have prescribed fasting to you, لعلكم تتقون, so that you may achieve taqwa. Now let's pay a little bit attention to how through fasting, we fast, alhamdulillah, Ramadan comes and we fast, and how do we achieve taqwa through that? If we pay attention, I think we can really build up the taqwa. It's an opportunity that is coming up in 2 weeks' time for us to see if we can achieve taqwa. And how can you do that? You know, fasting is a very, very unique worship. When you're fasting, nobody knows except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether you're abstaining from food and drink. You know that, right? Nobody knows. If you're not under watch from anybody to see that you're eating or drinking or not. Doesn't, it's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. If you go into some corner and sneak up, drink something, nobody knows. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. So, and if you're not doing it, no matter how thirsty you feel, no matter how hungry you feel, you're doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to show off to anybody. Fasting is such a unique thing that you cannot do it except you're doing it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should have that consciousness in us. And there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that fasting is, of course, the primary thing is in fasting is you abstain from food and drink and sexual activity from dawn to dusk. That's the basic definition. But there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says that those who fast and do not give up lying, do not give up cheating, do not give up insulting others, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his word, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's word says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need them to be hungry and thirsty. Does not even use the word fasting. If you do not give up other things like lying and cheating and something, people may have developed for one reason or the other, some cultural things also play into. But if you are, so every minute of your day of fasting, you interact with other people. And you're careful. I'm fasting, I'm not going to be lying to him. I should not be lying to him. I should not be cheating him. I should not be, all these things, when you are looking at some things, you say that I'm fasting. I should not be looking at things which are forbidden by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me to look at. Everything you do with the intention that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, to me, imagine that, yes, that if every minute of my day of 30 days of fasting, I keep thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's what the definition of taqwa is, that you get consciousness in your life that, okay, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm doing it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me to do that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that He has given a very nice prescription for us to achieve taqwa. That is the fasting in the month of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu فَجَعَلْنَاهَا نَكَالًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهَا وَمَا خَلْفَهَا وَمَوْعِظَةً لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizes Jews on transgressions of Sabbath and set them up as a warning example for their time and for our time to come, as well as an admonition for all who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now let's come to the rewards. I don't know, I don't want to run over the time. Now,
I just mentioned to Imam Hazan that I was telling him the other day about this Nakalan.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now
You
the
go
rewards.
Go back to that so Imam Hazan can read it.
Yeah. So, obviously, we know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given so many responsibilities, expectations for the muttaqeen, we should also know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must have set some rewards for the muttaqeen also. And there are rewards for the muttaqeen. أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the muttaqoon and to say that these are the people who are on correct guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And they will be the most successful. Does not say whether in this world or in the hereafter. Could be both places. Definitely in the hereafter. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves muttaqin. That's also another reward. And the وقيل للذين اتقوا ماذا أنزل ربكم قالوا خيرا للذين أحسنوا في هذه الدنيا حسنة والدار الآخرة خير الدار المتقين. But when those who are conscious of God are asked, what is it that your sustainer has bestowed from on high on you, they answer, goodness supreme. This is in the hereafter. People are asked, what have you received? They respond, goodness supreme, good fortune awaits us in the world, in this world, and all who preserve in the doing good. But their ultimate state will be will be far better still. For now, excellent indeed will be the state of God consciousness in the hereafter. So they we already went through one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses taqwa as the criterion to determine who is the best one. And this is the best reward that not only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the rewards to people in the paradise, but gives it in a certain way. يَوْمَ يَحْشُرُ الْمُتَّقِينَ إِلَى الرَّحْمَنِ وَفْدًا. Imagine the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there and He is giving reward to people, giving punishments to people and sending them on. When it comes to muttaqeen, He asked them to come in a procession. All the muttaqeen, and one of the tafasir say that they will be mounted onto beautiful camels and they will become in a procession in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where He will give the reward. And this is described for muttaqeen, not for anybody else. So of course we hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enables us in this month of Ramadan to do what He has asked us to do and do it with the full intention and do it with the full consciousness that we are doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and hope and pray that we get a little bit of taqwa from doing what we are doing, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the rewards that He has promised for all those things. So I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Wonderful outline of muttaqeen and taqwa and all that. So we open it for any questions, comments from anybody. Yes, Dr. Dina.
Thank you so much for an enlightening lecture. I have a couple of questions that might take us into the Arabic linguistics. So you make a distinction between the categories, muttaqoon, mu'minun, muslimun. How about the levels within the category itself? So what's the difference between
The levels.
the levels between muttaqoon? So you have the muttaqoon sometimes, but then you have also reference to alladhina ittaqa, which is quite different. So I wonder if you can tell us something about that. And the other question is, there are some ayahs that also mentions وَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ الَّتِي أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ in Al-Imran. So how do we understand that in the sense of consciousness?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear. I have a little bit difficulty here.
So the second question is, اتقوا النار. Be conscious, if we're using the definition of consciousness.
Okay.
Be conscious of النار التي أعدت للكافرين.
Yeah,
And that's in
yeah.
Al-Imran. So how do we reconcile that in understanding the definition?
Well, اتقوا النار and اتقوا الله, I mean, obviously, you don't need to be conscious of, you need to be fearful and afraid of, stay away from the fire. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is that He has already blessed you for so much, and out of respect for what we have received from Him, then you are, that's why I like the definition of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rather than the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With fire, I mean, you need to be, of course, fire in the hereafter is, yes, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants in the Quran al-Majid again and again that if you are disobedient, if you have breaking the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll have to face the fire. So, but it will not be consciousness, that will be actually the fear that yes, I should not be disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to protect myself from the fire. I think taqwa is also translated as a shield. As a shield, Umar radiallahu ta'ala is described taqwa as some analogy that he gave. The person is wearing some clothes which are delicate clothes and walking around a thorny pathway. That he should be, he or she will be very careful keeping the clothes together so they don't go and get attached in any thorns and tear them up. So that's Umar radiallahu ta'ala's definition, that you spend your life that way, that okay, if I go this way, I might disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it got to be. So I didn't go through that. One part of the taqwa is also what is the fiqhi definition of taqwa. How do you understand taqwa? Fiqhi definition of this will be that you are aware of what is haram and what is halal, so that you can stay away from haram and practice halal. Not only that, but you also be aware of what is haram and what's the word? Let me have it written down. Makruh. What is makruh and what is not makruh? You should be. If it's makruh, it's not as bad as haram, but still karah. There is karahiyat in there. And so you should be aware of these things as to what are the things. So if you have a knowledge of what is halal and what is haram and what is makruh and what is not, what is mubah and what is not, all these things help you to stay away from the things that displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and practice things which please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you a question.
If I may,
Yeah.
These are the questions, Brother Muhammad, from people who are thinking, and these are very interesting. So the first question about different levels of these categories. This is very interesting, and
Because they're not the same.
it's worthy of exploring.
Yeah.
And and the second thing is, in the Quran, very well that same words are used in different meanings. So there is a particular word that is in the Quran, we understand it differently.
I have a reservation on this, and I know many scholars think that, but I firmly believe that each word has its own meaning. They might kind of come close to one another, but there is a very particularity of the use of each word in each sentence, the way it should really let us inquire into what is that meaning. And when it comes to Al-Muttaqoon and Al-Ladina Taqaw, I feel that Al-Ladina Taqaw is just taking one step on that path, but Al-Muttaqoon, they are steadfast in that path.
I'd like to ask you a question, because you are very good. What is the root of the word?
It is waqaya, which is to shield, but which is what the Exactly.
is part of the taqwa, right?
Yes. Right. But the taqwa maybe can be in multiple ways. So it can be fear, but it also can be love.
That's right.
Like, one of the things that was said about and that's what you mentioned, how do you attaqullah when you love him so much?
Yeah.
But they said actually, and maybe that's a little bit of a Sufi interpretation, is when you love someone so much, you're so afraid that he wouldn't love you back. Seriously. So this is like...
It's a different kind of fear. It's not like a fear of a snake.
But you're so afraid that his love will be turned away from you, which is a very... it's the love of the heart, more than the fiqhi.
The English, the word awe. You are in awe of somebody. You're not, a big personality, big leader. You're afraid that you might make a mistake, so you're very careful when you're talking to them. So you have an awe, reverence, of your parents. And
The same way as you mentioned the dad, sometimes when we love our parents, we're
Yeah.
so afraid they would be upset with us.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not that we're fearing that they punish us, but you're so afraid they would be upset with you,
yeah, yeah,
unhappy with you.
yeah.
I don't want, yeah, please. I think I heard one complete lecture that Dr. Walid Khair gave also on Taqwa. You have it, yeah.
Anyways, no question. I think we all agree that taqwa is a loaded expression in Quran, which means that it carries a lot of meanings. But it may be helpful sometimes, like to go to something like little more practical, because it's very abstract. So when Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu wa karramallahu wajha was asked about taqwa, so he gave them an example so that it bring it closer to their comprehension. He said, think about yourself in an open area where are so many bushes and thorns, and that may hurt you and everything. What do you do? So he said, the people told him that "Ushammiru wa attaqi," which means like I will hold up my clothes, okay, and I will try really like to navigate so that I will not be. So in other words, you are trying to avoid or shield yourself from these really thorns. So, and this may give us an idea that this is it's not a passive, process. It is really an active, positive, process to achieve. And I see it as you were saying, so because if you hear only muttaqeen, you may think that this is a static thing, that okay, I have reached. No, it is not. Okay, so the taqwa or ihsan, or there's no limit for them. So you have always to strive and be active and be vigilant to continue doing the things that will keep you on that straight path, and not really, and to shield yourself from things that may divert us from the straight path. And so think about what I'm going to say. I am not forcing it on anybody, but if you look at all the verses in Quran that talks about taqwa in all forms, whether muttaqeen, muttaqoon, ittaqa, ittaqaw, you will find that the common denominator is what we call in Arabic al-thabat, endurance, staying the course. And think about it. Ittaqun nar. I have to stay the course so that I will not really.
It's a process.
It's a process. It's an active process. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. It means that I have to be to the last like breath. You see, staying the course that I have chosen for myself, that will lead me to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and anything that will cause His displeasure, I have to avoid. Ittaqullah, you see what I mean? So it's because really, like when we say ya khaf Allah, but really Quran said khafa maqama rabbih. So that helps us to understand khafa yakhafuna rabbahum. You see, it means that they are really concerned, like Allah subhanahu, the awe that you are talking about, or the fear that am I going to be loved by Him the same way I am loving Him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more really like more generous than us. He said yuhibbuhum wa yuhibbuna. He started by Himself. Radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. Always He started Himself with that this good, nice relationship, beautiful relationship between Allah and His really creatures. Yeah, exactly. So and He starts by that before we commit ourselves to that type of relationship. So think about it really more about this idea of endurance And believe me, you will. وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل لعلكم ذلك فصاكم به لعلكم تتقون. Think about Siyam. Siyam, what? I mean, if I want to translate, to understand Siyam in one word, I can say the ability to say no. What does it mean when I said I don't want to eat from this time to this time or drink or whatever? Okay, you have the ability to say no, which means that you are staying the course. What does it mean? Because we are all bombarded with all the things that will lure us to deviate from the path. And so Siyam becomes a very important technology of the self. Not technology from the outside to show our power. No. It is technology of the self.
Self-restraint.
I'm sorry?
Self-restraint.
Exactly. But really, I like this idea of technology. Foucault, who was the first one who really threw this term, technology of the self, but he could not mention one technology. He was not able to prescribe one simple technology. He was sure that we need technologies for ourselves. Because he was
very interesting.
Very interesting.
To have a talk on Foucault and
and the technologies of the self that are very important. And one of them is all these really technologies from prayer to dua to salah to siyam to hajj. All these are technologies to make out of us a totally different human being, capable of staying that course. And by the way, these ranks that we are all talking about, Muslimin, Mu'mineen, Muhsineen, all of them need guidance. You see, Hudan lil-nas, Quran is Hudan lil-nas, is that right? But don't think that if you reach the level of taqwa, you don't need guidance. You need more guidance. Think about it like if I am walking, I can keep my balance easily. If I'm riding a bicycle, I need to be more vigilant to keep my balance. If I am driving a car, I'm more vigilant to keep the balance. If you are a pilot or in a rocket, you need more vigilance because any deviation is really detrimental. And so the same way, if when we go into these ranks, Muttaqeen, Muhsineen, Mu'mineen, we need more guidance. This is why Quran said, Al-Qasim, تلك آيات الكتاب المبين هدى ورحمة هدى وبشرى للمؤمنين. سورة لقمان ألف لام ميم تلك آيات الكتاب الحكيم هدى ورحمة للمحسنين. هدى. So Muhsineen need huda, Muttaqeen need huda, not only the regular human, but at every level we continue to need the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
One little example that also explains that, there is a fiqhi rule that on your cloth, a little bit of dirt which is not permissible, a little bit of dirt, not more than like a coin. So that's permissible to have that and still not worry about it, that you're violating anything. But one of the scholars who taught that fiqh, he was seeing that there was some dirt on he went out and started to wash it. So people asked, you told us that this is permissible, and why are you washing it? He said, what I told you was fiqh, what I'm doing is taqwa. That no doubt should be there, whatever in consideration of the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I am able to wash it, I will wash it. Going beyond the fiqhi rules is also considered part of taqwa.
Barakallah fiqh. Any other comments, questions? It's been very interesting here, learning a lot.
And let's, pray all together that the month of Ramadan is coming. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and bless us with more taqwa by compared to from the beginning of Ramadan to the end of Ramadan, that we exit the month of Ramadan with a lot more taqwa in us.
I heard the khutbah a couple of weeks ago, actually, at the Islamic Foundation. The khatib was saying, he read the first ayah of Ya alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Then he went to this next ayah. He said, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. So actually, Ramadan is connected with Quran more than fasting, actually.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. He elaborated on that. So just for as a note here to mention it to people. Any other questions? Any other comments? Thank you very much, Dr. Dina. Very interesting, and that led also to Dr. Walid Khair, explaining, and Dr. Our Imam Hazim. Maybe one day he will do khutbah about that.
I'm just taking everything in.
I have a little summary page. I can give it to you if you want to make copies and distribute it, so you can do that.
I think you sent us the, no, this is one here.
I mean, it's the same slides compiled in one page.
Oh,
that you can-
one page has all
Yeah.
the slides of the PowerPoint.
I'd like to get a copy of it.
Anybody who wants to copy, we can make copies of
I'd like a copy.
I can send you the soft copy, you can distribute, and.
Okay, you
hard
can
copy,
send
you
a
can
digital
make
copy. I can also make copy of this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just yours.
Any other thing before?
Just a very simple message. Arabic is a very rich language.
Yes.
As a rich language, the context of the sentence becomes very important. And the same as Taqwa. Taqwa has really many meanings, but the majority of the meaning, as I heard from the previous people, it really needs to look at the context of what is really the ayah is saying, or the message being delivered. In English, I speak English, but I don't know, I never have seen this rich variety in Arabic as compared to English. That's the issue.
That's why you have to always go to the root of the word.
Correct. The root is the best way.
You have to go back to the root of the word to understand really where it came from, what the meaning of it. It gives you more understanding of what really.
Correct.
And taqwa is considered such a comprehensive word. A lot of people have hard time translating into one word in English. So it's consciousness, it's a little bit of fear, reverence, respect, all those things are tied into taqwa.
It's a very good, really, comment from about the context, and that reminded me of وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. People look at that as social taqwa. So like in our social life, we have to be very vigilant, because if we do not learn from previous experiences and to transform our present life, okay, we will fall into the same problem.
Yeah.
And so we need vigilance, we need this type of endurance, we need to shield ourselves from the mistakes of the past, which we are repeating them. And then we blame history, and we say that history repeats itself. We are repeating history.
And you can only do that if you're conscious of them.
Exactly, yes,
So
exactly.
which takes us to that meaning of consciousness.
وإذا
If consciousness
yes.
happens, let's not do
تقوا
it
ما
again.
بين أيديكم وما خلفكم. Exactly, yeah. So these converge.
Yeah.
Okay, all these meanings, yeah.
Surah Yasin, okay. With that, very interesting. We can keep going, but I think we have to close. I'd like to announce next time we have a lecture. Actually, we were going to have Brother Bilya Torlo to give a lecture on scam and all that, but he is busy, and so we postponed that, or maybe some other time. But next lecture is actually by our Imam, Dr. Hazem Fazlik. Inshallah, it will be on Sunday, March 29th. And that's after Ramadan. And the speaker will be our Imam, of course. And the title of his lecture is Akhlaq and Identity, Character Building in Contemporary Muslim Children and Adolescents. So that should be very, very interesting subject, for our daily life.
Yes.
Thanks. So we welcome you all to attend and invite your friends, and please mark your calendars. That's March 29th, inshallah, at 11:15. So welcome, and again, it's free of charge. Assalamu alaikum.
But with that rewards.
Assalamu alaikum. Very good, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.